in the media conference with Lal Goyal, which is brought to you by V4 News, Global TV, V4 Stream, Malladu TV, News Gaon se, Samvad Sarokar News, Organ Donation India Foundation and Gyan. Our endeavor is to enlighten you with the current topic. And as you all are aware that the 5 states are undergoing for the elections. And the current topic is the voters' do's and don'ts. जागेगा सो पाएगा ये कहते हैं बुद्धिमान, पाएंगे वो कहां जो कि रात दिन सोएंगे. Just received some message. No. Okay. होते जो स्वतंत्र वही लोकतंत्र भोगते हैं, रहेंगे गुलाम यदि बोझ नित ढोएंगे. वोट दे के 5 साल सोते मतदाता सारे, सोने वाले निश्चय ही भाग्य निज खोएंगे. कहते हैं लोग कि नेता हुए भ्रष्टाचारी, काटेंगे फसल वही जैसा बीज बोएंगे. भारत देश विशाल हमारा, ललचाता जग इस पर सारा. 100 करोड़ से अधिक आबादी, सब प्रकार सबको आजादी. संविधान के सब अधिकारी, जनमत निहित शक्तियां सारी. जनादेश से चलता शासन, सबसे इच्छित है अनुशासन. संपत्ति सब है देश में अपने, देखें सब जन सुख के सपने. जाति लिंग धर्म से न्यारा, है विधान समता का सारा. सबको शिक्षा स्वास्थ्य सभी को, भोजन पानी साध्य सभी को. भूमि भाग जल वन संवर्धन, रोजगार धन संपत्ति अर्जन. सड़क रेल अरु वायु विमानन, आवागमन मुक्त परिवहन. न्याय सहज भय मुक्त प्रशासन, संविधान का यह आश्वासन. लोकतंत्र जब है हितकारी, किस कारण सब लोग दुखारी. जब तक होता जाएगा बिन सोचे मतदान, तब तक होगा ही नहीं भारत देश महान. लिख जाता है भाग्य अपने संग में देश का, जब होता मतदान दांव पेच सब झेल का. अपने हित की बात से जनता जब अनजान, जननायक जन को ठगें पाकर के सम्मान. This short poem was written especially for the today's topic by Mr. Paramatmanand Pandey Matwala. He is the president of Utho Jago Foundation. He is a journalist and a farmer. Thank you, Mr. Pandey, for writing such a nice poem on the today's topic. Thank you very much. Voting is a method for a group such as a meeting or an electorate in order to make a collective decision or express an opinion, usually following discussions, debates, or election campaigns. Democracies elect holders of high office by voting. Residents of a place represented by an elected officials are called constituents, and those constituents who cast a ballot for their chosen candidates are called voters. There are different systems for collecting votes, but while many of the systems used in decision making can also be used as electoral system which cater for proportional representation, can only be used in elections. In a democracy, a government is chosen by voting in an election, a way for an electorate to elect, that is, choose among several candidates for rule. In a representative democracy, voting is the method by which the electorate appoints its representatives to government and by which the elected representatives make decisions. India is a country divided into states and union territories with a parliamentary system governed under the Constitution of India, which defines the power distribution among the federal government and the states. The President of India is the ceremonial head of the country and supreme commander-in-chief for all defense forces in India. However, it is the Prime Minister of India who is the leader of the party or political alliance having a majority in the national elections to the Lok Sabha that exercises most executive powers for matters that require countrywide affection under a federal system. India is regionally divided into states and union territories, and each state has a chief minister who is the leader of the party or political alliance that has won a majority in the regional elections, otherwise known as the state assembly elections, that exercises executive powers in that state. The respective state's chief minister has executive powers within the state and works jointly with the Prime Minister of India or their ministers on matters that requires both state and central attention. Some union territories also elect an assembly and have a territorial government, and other mainly smaller union territories are governed by a person appointed by the President of India. The President of India monitors the rule of law through their appointed governors in each state, and on their recommendation can take over the executive powers from the chief minister of the state temporarily when the elected representatives of the state government has failed to create a peaceful environment and has deteriorated into chaos. The President of India dissolves the existing state government if necessary and a new election is conducted. This time, option of postal ballot facility has been extended to the electors who are COVID-19 positive or suspect as certified by competent authority and are in home or institutional quarantine, along with those marked as persons with disabilities and above the age of 80 years. The Election Commission has issued detailed instructions to the concerned chief electoral officers to ensure that every polling station is equipped with assured minimum facilities like drinking water, waiting shed, toilet with water facilities, adequate arrangements for lighting, ramp of appropriate gradient for the persons with disabilities. The special facilities will include mandatory sanitization of polling stations, thermal checking of voters at every point, either by polling staff or paramedical staff or an ASHA worker. If temperature is above the set norms of the health ministry at first reading, then it will be checked twice. And if it remains, then the elector shall be provided with a token and will be asked to come for voting at the last hour of poll. At the last hour of poll, such electorals will be facilitated for voting strictly following COVID-19 related preventive measures. Earmarking circles for maintaining social distances for voters standing in the queue will be there, and the services of booth level officers and volunteers will be engaged to monitor and regulate social distancing norms strictly. Face masks will be kept in reserves for those electors who are not carrying the mask. Hand gloves will be provided to the voters for signing on the voter register and pressing the button of electronic voting machine for voting. In view of the pandemic, the Commission has decided to extend the poll timing by 1 hour in all assembly constituencies, except in the areas affected by left-wing extremism. COVID-19 patients who are quarantined will be allowed to cast their vote at the last hour of the poll day at their respective polling stations under the supervision of health authorities, strictly following COVID-19 related preventive measures. Proper mechanism of collection and disposal of waste or used gloves will be put in place at each polling station. Tips for the first-time voters: how to vote for the first time. Election Commission of India keeps updating its electoral rolls and every year facilitating the entry of the lakhs of new voters to the list after attaining the age of 18. Often these first-time voters play a crucial role in setting the poll narrative, be it general elections or assembly polls. In 2019, there were over 20 lakhs first-time voters in West Bengal alone. In Assam, there are 12,81,918 first-time electors who will be voting in the state assembly polls starting March 27, 2021. In Tamil Nadu, there are 13,09,311 first-time voters. Kerala has around 2.99 lakhs voters in the age above 18 years group who will be voting for the first time. As the first-time electorals go to vote this year, here are some do's and don'ts for the young voters, although they are also applicable for all the voters who are going to cast their votes in the assembly elections, which has already started now, but it is going to be up to in the end of the next month. And they are, what they must do: check for the name in the electoral rolls by visiting Election Commission's website. Do check for the polling booth. This time, the Election Commission has increased the number of polling booths in view of COVID-19. There are only 1,000 voters per polling booth. Earlier, it used to be about 1,500 voters. Check the voting time at polling booth. Generally, voting starts at 7 a.m. and continues till 6 p.m. This time, the last hour is reserved for COVID-19 positive patients. In a polling booth, there are a number of counters, rooms, with each having separate electronic voting machines. So when you reach your polling station, there will be officials who will check your name in the electoral rolls and will let you know on which counter you will be allowed to vote. Do check the profile of candidates contesting from the constituency before voting. Follow COVID-19 guidelines like wearing a mask and social distancing. Do carry an additional ID card like Aadhaar or driving license. A VVPAT machine will be there linked to EVM. It will reflect the symbol, name of the party, candidate after you press the button in the EVM. If there is any inconsistency between the VVPAT's slip and the button you pressed, inform the presiding officer about this. Now, what you are not supposed to do, so don't do these things as a voter, whether you are first time or a regular voter. Don't forget to carry your EPIC voter's ID card. It will be quite a difficult task to find your name in the electoral rolls without the card. Don't jump the queue and wait for your turn to come while maintaining the social distancing. Don't carry your mobile phone inside the EVM room. Don't try to click a selfie while pressing the EVM button. This may land you in trouble. Don't try to press more than one button, and be watchful while pressing the button for your candidate. Now, to discuss this very, very important, relevant topic, that voters' do's and don'ts, we have a very alert, informed, knowledgeable, learned panel with us. And I would like to invite my first panelist. He is Dr. C.V. Anand Bose, IAS. Dr. Bose is a one-man expert commission on labor to prepare an action plan for the welfare and development of the workforce in the context of COVID-19. He was former head of the Disaster Management, Government of India, and Central Draft Relief Commissioner, Government of India. He is also the Principal Advisor, Government of India Heritage Project. He was the Vice Chancellor of National Museum, University of Delhi. He has authored 40 books in English, Malayalam, and Hindi, including novels, short stories, and essays. 4 of his books have become bestsellers. 4 books on Vastu and architecture and 1 book on housing received prestigious the Sharjah International Book Fair Award. Dr. Bose is an housing expert, innovator, writer, orator, and visionary. The path-breaking institutions set up by him, such as Nirmiti Kendra Building Center, District Tourism Council, and Habitat Alliance, have been replicated at the state, national, and global level. He was the head of the prestigious Supreme Court Committee on the Treasures of Sri Padmabhaswamy Temple. Dr. Bose addressed United Nations General Assembly and specialized sessions 5 times on various international issues. Dr. Bose is a recipient of 31 national and international awards, including United Nations Global Best Practice Award. He also received prestigious Jawaharlal Nehru Fellowship. Kerala government termed him Lord of Ideas. Former Prime Minister Mr. Manmohan Singh called him inspired civil servant, and our Honorable Prime Minister Mr. Modi called him man of ideas. Welcome, Dr. C.V. Anand Bose, IAS, on our show. Dr. Bose, you were very closely associated with the polling because you being the earlier as a presiding officer and then the election observers, and being in the bureaucracy for so many years, you have seen so many elections very closely. We would like to know from you the voters' do's and don'ts. Dr. C.V. Anand Bose, IAS, please.
Mr. Goyal, elections are around the corner in 4 states and 1 union territory, as you know. The ballot is much more powerful than a bullet. as far as democracy is concerned. I have had the opportunity to witness the elections so many times, elections to the local bodies, to the assembly, and also to the parliament, in various roles as returning officer, and of course as district collector, then election observer in various constituencies, particularly that of our friend Maneka Gandhi in Pilipit. Having seen elections so many times, I think one difference is that earlier we were casting our vote. Now we are voting our caste. That change, that deterioration has come in the Indian polity. There are certain duties and responsibilities which are there for the common citizen during election. You know, the key to the success of democracy is eternal vigil. Eternal vigil is a price of liberty, as they say. Dr. Radhakrishnan has said, if the flame of democracy is put out in India, darkness will spread throughout the Asiatic continent in the whole world. In this background, when we analyze the responsibility and the duties of the average citizen, the voter, I think there are a lot of points which are of paramount importance. Because this is a crucial decision which we are making. Who should be the dispensers of your destiny, at least for the coming 5 years? That is a crucial and important decision which cannot brook any nonsense. There are duties of the voters before, during, and after the election. Before, of course, as you have read out for the edification of the new voters, that is applicable to all. To check the electoral rolls to see whether our name is there. If it is not there, there are prescribed procedure for getting it included. And before the election, one should also have an idea about which are the political parties and the political alliances which are fighting. And then an idea about the candidates who are there in your constituency. You should be very clear about fundamental issues like which is a booth where you are supposed to vote. I think these are all things which have to be done before the election. And before the election, it is also mandatory, it is also necessary for every citizen to understand what is the manifesto of each political party or political alliance. See, they are responsible for this. I would also suggest here that there should be a legislation to see that all that is there given in the manifesto should be implemented. Those parties who fail to implement it should be debarred from contesting election. Because now it is a wish list which is given as a manifesto. That should not be there. Even then, before election, it is enjoined upon every citizen that he understands the manifesto of each party and see what they stand for. Similarly, about each candidate, their antecedents, their proclaimed stand, their political position, all these things are important before the election. And during the election, of course, go well on time and ensure that you cast your vote. There, of course, there are problems which I'll take up later. But when you go there, you may even see that your vote has already been cast. But be very vigilant during the election day. And then the third is after the election. After the election also, the duty of the citizens do not end there. You have to constantly monitor the performance of the MLA or the MP or the Panchayat member whom you are electing. He has the responsibility to deliver. If he does not deliver, there should be a monitoring mechanism to bring him to book, and social audit should be there. And we have the RTI. We have so many means of getting information about the performance of a candidate or a minister. And of course, we do not have the right to recall, but public pressure is something which can be mounted on an elected MLA or an MP, even during his tenure. I think this is very essential in a dynamic democracy such as ours. The best way to prevent fraud or corruption in governmental activities is to expose governmental activities to public gaze. I think public gaze is very, very important. And now certain aberrations which are taking place. You know, water education is only given in lip service. Of course, we have the National Voters' Day, 25th of January, that is the birthday of the Election Commission. is celebrated as National Voters' Day. But I think it goes without any dent, because it's a continuous process that the electorate or the voters are kept educated. See, when adult franchise, when franchise was granted to the common man, other than the lords and the aristocrats in England, it was said, we should educate our masters. And Walpole said, an educated vote is a boon to democracy, while an uneducated vote is a bane. Therefore, electoral education is very important, which I think India is not really giving adequate emphasis. Now, certain malpractices which are there. And for the information of my esteemed viewers, there was a concept of pocket borough or rotten borough in England. We have also imbibed or copied the British system of democracy here. Therefore, it is relevant to the present context. Now, the rotten borough means there is no such borough, there is no such constituency. It's an imaginary notional constituency which is nurtured, but people get elected from there. Pocket borough means one lord or a thane, he decides what will happen in that constituency, who will contest, who will win, who will vote. Those days are gone. Those days are gone in England, but it is coming back to India, particularly Kerala. The other day, I think 2 days back, there was a verdict by the High Court of Kerala. They said that double counting and multiple counting, one voter appears in more than 8 constituencies, he gets 8 votes. And double counting is always there. And now, maybe exaggeration, it is said that there are about 20 lakh of Bangladeshis, and including Rohingyans, who are parked in Kerala. I do not really authenticate the number, but the fact remains that its judicial verdict to the Election Commission of India is to see that this anomaly, that is multiple voting, is abolished, done away with before the voting takes place. This is a laudable objective, but I don't think within these 4 days, it is possible to clean up the erroneous voting list. But of course, we have the election law. Even after the election, we can take action in that. I think these are certain tendencies which are marring the sanctity of elections in India. And rigging is there. Even in 1957, rigging was there, detected in Bihar. And mass-scale rigging, booth capturing. See, in West Bengal, where the CPM had a 33-year stint, booth capturing was the rule rather than the exception. In fact, two agencies become very active during election. One is government, other the goons, not necessarily in that order. This has happened in so many places. So it is only in 1989, that a law was enacted. The law was put in force that booth capturing is a punishable offense. Till that time, it was only a malpractice. It was not a punishable offense. There are so many things that are happening in this country which mar the sanctity of elections. In the 1987 Jammu and Kashmir election, of course, insurgency was there. It was only a namesake election. Rigging was done in favor of Farooq Abdullah's National Congress. So this is a recurring phenomenon in Indian polity. Now, what is the remedy? Yes, there are scientific remedies. EVM, electronic voting machine, has gone a long way in preventing this, but still it is there. But there, of course, there cannot be a foolproof election as such, that I agree, but near foolproof election should be there, because the ballot is the most important tool with which social changes and economic changes can be brought about. Therefore, as Dr. Radhakrishnan said, I quote once again, if the flame of democracy is put out in India, darkness will spread throughout the Asiatic continent, nay, in the whole world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. C.V. Anand Bose, for giving your views on the voters' do's and don'ts. And what Dr. Bose has said very clearly, that voters are going to be the main, those who are going to elect, but they have to be very, very visible, because the voting, according to Dr. Bose, are taking place in a very, sometimes in a rigged way. And he has given the example of Kerala, where the Honorable High Court Kerala has asked the Election Commission of India to investigate and check how come one voter is voting, has been listed in 8 constituencies. And he also mentioned about 20 lakhs Bangladeshis, etc., are enrolled as voters although he says I cannot authenticate. But it shows that the elections, which we always think it's a very prized thing, because after all, the democracy, it's called to be a temple of democracy. When we have such type, we are electing somebody for the assembly or parliament, we always feel that the person who has been elected, he's or she is going to serve the country or the state or the constituency. But if he or she has been elected on a rigged way, then it is not going to serve the purpose. And he has given example, and he says that there should be a compulsory following up of the manifesto. He says once the manifesto is released by a political party, that manifesto should be implicable, and they should see to it that everything whatsoever they are mentioning in the manifesto, that should be followed. But what has been seen, according to Dr. Bose, that they just show very goody-goody things in the manifesto, but afterwards nobody bothers for that. For that, he says that the voters should also ask these questions to the elected representative, even afterwards, by using the RTI or putting some pressures to the MLAs, MP or Panchayat representatives to see to it that whatsoever they have promised during the election, they should follow. And he has also mentioned that try to check your name, whether it is in list or not. So all those things which voters have to do. But the main thing is the voter should be alert. He or she should check which candidate or which political party they are going to vote, what will be the future of their own state or the country if they are voting to a wrong or a right person. Thank you very much, Dr. Sivanand Bose, for giving your opening remarks on the voters' do's and don'ts. Now, I would like to invite my next guest, and he is Lieutenant General Sharat Chand. Lieutenant General Sharat Chand, PVSM, UYSM, AVSM, VSM. General Sharat Chand is the former Vice Chief of the Army Staff. General Sharat Chand is a highly decorated officer who retired after 39 long years of service in the Army. Having served in all operational areas along the Indo-Pak and Indo-China borders, the Kashmir Valley, Assam, Operation Pawan in Sri Lanka, and the United Nations mission in Somalia, he rose to be the Vice Chief of the Army Staff, the highest level achieved by any Keralite. His contributions to the nation have been recognized through many honors. Prominent among them are the Vishisht Seva Medal, VSM, in 2008, Ati Vishisht Seva Medal, AVSM, in 2014, the Uttam Yudh Seva Medal, UYSM, in 2016, and the Param Vishisht Seva Medal, PYSM, in 2018. In his capacity as the Vice Chief of the Army Staff, he headed the General Staff branch at the Army headquarters. He was responsible for ensuring the operational effectiveness of the Army by directly overseeing the functioning of the military operations, military intelligence, and operational logistics directorates. He also coordinated and facilitated decision-making on critical issues involving multiple stakeholders within and outside the Army. Respective planning, force modernization, and capability development of the Indian Army were his most important functions, and therefore he played a pivotal role in the procurement process of weapons, ammunition, and equipment. To facilitate this function, he was empowered as the highest financial authority in the Indian Army with ample financial powers, and worked closely with the Ministry of Defense, Ordnance Factories Board, Defense Research and Development Organization, and the civil industry. General Sharat Chand, who hails from Kotarakara, is a product of Sainik School, Kajakutam. Commissioned into the Grewal Rifles in June 1979, he also rose to be its colonel of the Grewal Rifles Regiment on appointment he held for 5 long years. Welcome, General Sharat Chand, on our show. General Sharat Chand, please unmute yourself. General, you have heard what Dr. C.V. Anand Bose, IAS, has spoken. And he has clearly mentioned that the voters have to not only whistle for his votes or her votes, but also know the candidate, the political party, their manifestos. And in one way, he says that the voters should be enlightened enough before voting. It's his responsibility or her responsibility. And when I narrated that poem in Hindi, which was written by Mr. Pandey, it was also mentioned in that to blame the government afterwards, it is not the correct thing. This is the time when you are voting as a voter, you should take full precautions and cast your vote before, after seeing all the candidates, the political parties, and do it judiciously. Welcome to our show, General Sharat Chand, the voters' do's and don'ts. General Sharat Chand, please.
Good morning, everybody. I'm thankful to Mr. Goel for giving me this opportunity to speak to you at this forum. Dr. C.V. Anand Bose has very rightly mentioned that the ballot is way more powerful than the bullet. Unfortunately or fortunately, I am more closer to the bullet than the ballot. My 40 years in the service and even the 7 years before that were far distanced from ballot, elections, electoral processes, and electioneering, and much closer to the bullet. But having gone through this 40 to 50 years of life, I have realized that to prevent the bullet being fired, it's more important that the ballot be respected. The responsibility for respecting the ballot lies not only with the government, the governing agencies, but most importantly with the voters themselves. To give you a few examples, way back in 1987, we were rushed to Sri Lanka. I happened to be there. We lost a lot of lives. Why? Because the electoral process was not being followed correctly. The Tamilians were not getting their due. And that process, that problem continues even now. It was brought under control by the present regime in Sri Lanka, but the wounds are still fresh, and I don't think it'll ever die in the minds of the Tamilian population. Similar was the case, similar is what I saw in Somalia. Somalia, the United Nations intervened in 1992, again, because of factionalism. It is an Islamic country, and because of factionalism, because of not conducting elections properly, because they did not have the right people in power, because it was based on tribal or the caste system, the problem, United Nations had to intervene in 1992, and even after nearly 30 years, there is no stability in Somalia. Closer home, look at Bangladesh. How was it created? Basically because the larger Pakistanis were not respecting the larger population of East Pakistan, and ultimately having to give a good part of Pakistan away as a new nation. Look at the condition of Pakistan right now. It is under a military rule. The military guys think that they are doing the best for the country, and that's so they want to make the population believe. But look at what is happening. Look at their economic condition. Look at where they are standing. Look at the industrial condition. Look at their progress. Look at their job opportunities. Look at Nepal. Again, there is political instability. Now, coming back to our country, I've had an opportunity to serve in Assam many times. So way back in 1998, when I was deployed, again, I think 98 or 99, 97, 98, there was an election going to be held. Again, we were deployed there to ensure that the election takes place in a proper manner. So we were deployed in remote areas, and I happened to speak to the voters. Most of them poor tribal people. They had not heard of any political party other than the one which has been ruling the country for a long time. They had no idea as to what is a manifesto. They had no idea as to what the political parties have given them so far. And these poor people, they believe that everything from water to electricity to food that they are earning through their hard work is all courtesy the political party which was in power those days. So hence, lack of political awareness, which was exploited fully by the political parties concerned, and they continue to remain in power. So therefore, it is most important that we remain vigilant if our country has to survive, if our country has to progress, if there has to be development. So therefore, elections is a very, very important moment in the history of a nation, a state, and any organization. What is the purpose of people competing for elections with this kind of fervor and involvement? There's only one winner in every constituency, and together the largest party or a combination of parties, they form a government. So why are they trying to compete for the election? At the lowest level, it is for an individual achievement or individual benefits. But at the larger level, at a community level, at a national level, it is to control, it is to have an influence in the decision-making process of the country or the state. It is to have an influence on the utilization of resources of the state. It is to have an influence in the policies which are going to be followed. So the direction for the state or a country which is to be given is going to be dependent on the people who you elect. If people who you elect do not have the capacity to give the right direction, gradually the country or the state will go down, and we have adequate examples in our country. One of the states in our country is the richest in terms of natural resources, and it is one of the poorest as far as employment and individual incomes are concerned. Some time back, we often refer to that country, that state, as a state which was under Jungle Raj. The chief minister who was there had ruled for 3 consecutive tenures and brought down the state from wherever it was to such a low level that even after 2 tenures of a subsequent chief minister, he has not been able to revive the country, the state. Even today, that particular chief minister has enough influence all through caste and religious base, rather than with any ideas of development or a purposeful vision. So therefore, again coming to the point that we need to be vigilant and elect the right guy. I am currently settled in Kerala. Look at Kerala. Compare with Kerala is supposed to be the most educated state in this country. Kerala is supposed to be a state with the highest level of health index. But see where our industries, see the job opportunities. The maximum number of people in the Gulf region are Keralites. In fact, in some of the Gulf states, the population of Keralites are probably equal, if not more, than the local population themselves. All those who have gone for search for jobs, and not all of them are in the best of jobs, because there are no job opportunities out here. Look at various policies which has been adopted in the state. The education department, the field has been occupied by a particular minister from a particular community, which has given a direction for so many years, so that it is that particular community which benefits at the expense of somebody else, rather than a meritorious person. Look at the industry. There are hardly any industries in Kerala. So therefore, it is most important that we choose the right guy. So the first thing, most important thing that a voter, particularly this new voters, around 3 lakhs in the state now, have to pay attention, is to identify the right guy. Do not just go by, of course, you have to also consider as to which political party does he represent, because it is that political party which is going to influence the decision making in future or the policies of the future. But you must have an educated guy. You must have a guy who is looking in the right direction. In Kerala, if you go around the state, we have a number of our political leaders who've been representing certain assembly seats for many, many decades. In fact, the previous chief minister has been the representative of his constituency for the last 5 decades. So there are people of that kind too. So when you go to such constituencies, you wonder whether you are in Kerala or in some foreign country, because these representatives have ensured that their constituencies develop. They've ensured that every time they are repeatedly elected from that constituency, and mind you, it definitely is at the expense of not giving adequate attention or funds to other constituencies. So people who've been finance ministers of the state, look at that particular constituency. You have such broad roads, such smooth rides. You have various institutions that have come up. So it cannot be that a particular constituency alone comes up. It has to be the development as a state. While that guy cannot be defeated there ever because of what he has done to that constituency, because of what he's done to the people of that constituency, because of what he has done to people in and around him, whether relations or otherwise. But what has been his contribution to the state is most important question that a voter needs to ask. So therefore, that is another very important thing. The third important thing is, I mentioned about the voters in Assam not knowing what manifestos are and who are the political parties which are the political parties in the fray. Things are different now because of social media, spread of social media, and also spread of mobile communication. To the extent that there is an information overload, at least a good percentage of which is not the truth. So for a voter to sift out the facts from this so much of overload of information is next to impossible. So we are bombarded every day with videos, audios, news items, rumors that most voters are confused. So therefore, the third point I want to insist is that as a voter, please take a balanced view. Consult people, read newspapers, go through the social media if you can, and identify as to which is true and which is false. Unfortunately, in Kerala, you have various religious organizations themselves who are behind these kind of spread of rumors. Kindly make it a point to ensure that you do not get influenced by these news items. In fact, some time back, there was a person, very, very close guy, in fact, an educated, very educated fellow, was an ex-naval guy, who asked me, he says, Sharath, please let me know, please tell me, there is a fear amongst people out here that if the Bharatiya Janata Party comes to power, all the land of other communities will be taken away. I said, yeah, how can it ever happen? Can you ever do it? Have you seen it happen in any other state in the country? Have you seen any differentiation while distributing or giving jobs or distributing any assistance based on their caste, color, religion, or even political party? So these are the kind of news items which are spread, fake news which are spread, and particularly the people when people are told by these kind of things by the religious leaders, they tend to believe. So even if you belong to any of these communities, please maintain your identity, your individuality. You are a very, very powerful person. It is your responsibility to select the right leader for us. It's your responsibility to elect the right government. And if you do not exercise your franchise, you will be giving up on this responsibility. On that note, I will end for the time being. Thank you very much once again.
Thank you very much, General Sachin, for giving your views. And what General has mentioned that the voters' responsibility is too much. And he says that he has cited the examples of Sri Lanka, East Pakistan now, which is Bangladesh, Somalia. And he says that all these countries faced because of they have not given the importance to the voters, what the voters have used their franchise, and they have not respected the mandate. And that's why the problem started. He says in India, we have that good democracy, but many times it was misused due to the lack of information earlier. He has cited about the Assam, and he says in Assam there was people were not aware about the manifesto or about any other party than the ruling party. But now, because of the social media and all other medias, the people are overloaded with the news. And one point which he has made, which is a very appreciable point, is important point, is that about the fake news. Because nowadays the fake news are everywhere on the social media, and so much fake news that people are not getting distinction between a fake news and the genuine news. So he says the voter must first check whether it's a fake news or a real news. Only go for the correct views. Don't go and vote based on the rumors. And that is why the voters' vigilance is very much important. And he has given the examples how the voters have elected the chief minister, the finance ministers, and others which have become the chief minister after they have won the elections. And they are doing only for their constituencies, not for others. But a voter must see whether they are good for the state or not. Thank you very much, General Sharat Chand, for giving your views. I'm sure that voters who are going to cast their votes now in the remaining assembly elections or the phases, because first phase has already taken place in West Bengal, but other places and Assam also, but other places now the phases are going to take place, and in one of the union territory also. So let's hope that they all are being enriched and by the enlightened with the views which you have explained. Thank you very much, General Sharat Chand. Now I would like to invite my next guest, and he is Mr. Newly P. Rajshekharan. Mr. Rajshekharan is a writer, music composer, and CEO of Guru Management Consultants, Bengaluru. His creative and social activities include publishing 6 Malayalam novels and over 40 short stories. He published 2 English novels, King Pawn, based on Syrian civil war, and Azadi, based on the conflict in Kashmir. He has published Competency Web, The Corporate DNA, and several other papers. He composed over 200 songs for labels and independent music, currently promoting 3 YouTube channels. He is coaching and mentoring startups. He is having experience of 45 years of international director level. He worked in for-profit and not-for-profit organizations. For 15 years in financial services, Bank of India, Chase Manhattan, and Standard Chartered Bank. 10 years in oil and gas, Shell, ExxonMobil, Qatar Petroleum, and 10 years in non-profits, CGIAR, World Bank funded international system. 10 years in consultancy and teaching MBA students, entrepreneurs, and corporates. He lived and worked in over 45 countries across continents. He is a management consultant, coach, speaker, creative writer, musician, and active on social media. He is a strategist on governance, performance management, leadership development, and HR. His expertise in management of startup, downsizing, high growth, turnaround, and cultural transformations. He is a member of Mensa International. Welcome, Mr. Rajshekharan, on our show. Mr. Rajshekharan, you have heard Dr. C.V. Anand Bose as well as General Sharat Chand. Now, both emphasized about the vigilance or the awareness among the voters, not only for casting their votes, but to whom they are going to cast. That is a very, very important point. They must see their manifesto. They must see whether they are the parties are going to follow that manifesto, as well as they must see what this party or the candidate is going to do for their state or for the country. Now, you being such a globetrotter, and you have stayed in more than 45 countries, worked in 45 countries, you have seen the work here and there in all the countries, as well as you have also wrote the books on Syrian civil war and Azadi based on the conflict in Kashmir. So basically, you are also very closely associated with the democratic process or the country's political system. Now, we would like to know from you the voters' do's and don't. Mr. Niloli P. Rajashekharan, please.
Good morning, and thank you very much, Mr. Goel. I really appreciate this opportunity, which is very, very timely in terms of elections. And my request, which I personally sent to you, is to make the recordings of these available as soon as possible, because I think it needs to get a very wide audience. And it
before I will just excuse me. My request to all our panelists are, please don't take the name of any political party in your this thing, because elections are already on. Code of conducts are there. We do not want to influence the voter in any way. You can give your views, but don't mention any political party. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So I would start with the broad principles of democracy, just building on what has been said, because you talked about the process, the importance of the process of democracy, how voting happens, what are the do's and don'ts. And it's interesting that Bose talked about accountability, progress cards, and the responsibility to deliver what is promised, and also evaluating performance, and also to make sure that there is some consequences to action or inaction. And Lieutenant General Sharat Chand was talking from a different direction in terms of a political philosophy that people have, as well as looking at the awareness, the miscommunication, which can lead to distorted voting patterns, which is not in the interest of the state or the country. So they've all built a nice platform, but I'm going to go in a very slightly, in a slightly different direction, because people get the governments they deserve. And elections present voters with important choices, whether it's local, state, or center. So it's time to consider issues which you care about and decide which candidate you want to support based on certain things. So I'm just going to make more like a practical guide that if I'm a voter, what are the things I need to look at? The very first thing I need to look at is I have to decide what I'm looking for in a candidate. What do I want? So the positions they take on issues, what they will do. So your first step in picking a candidate is to decide the issues you care about and the qualities that you want in a leader. Both are important. Issues come from your belief. For example, you may be interested in the threat about nuclear war. As Lieutenant General said, you may not want war. So you're looking for people who will settle things peacefully. Government funding for student loans, teenage employment. There are issues that you might be interested in. And then you're looking for candidates who would represent those interests. So what they will do is probably the first thing you look at. And the second thing we look at is whether they can do it and whether they will actually do it. So then you're getting into looking at the leadership qualities of the person that you're talking about. Intelligence, honesty, education, the ability to communicate. Those are the issues which are more difficult to assess in one sense. But then you start looking at activities. If it's a person who has been already in the constituency, how long has he been in the constituency? Are you seeing after 5 years? Or after the elections, he just disappeared into the capital city and he was busy with other things? Was he actually present in the constituency? What's his been level of engagement? If you or your friends or relatives had issues that you needed to discuss with this person, was he available? And if he made commitments, even at the lowest levels, did he keep it? So these are the kind of things that we need to look at when you're looking at a candidate. And you need to probably put the political parties as second at this stage, because hardcore political slaves cannot look at any of these. They're already biased and they take a position based on whoever is the party candidate. We vote for them, even if it's a lamppost. So that is not conducive to a good democratic setup. Once we have done this and we have a reasonably good idea about what is it that we need, then you start looking at finding more about that candidate. And you can collect information these days from many, many sources, both positive and negative information. We can watch the press. There is a lot of campaign literature that will come through. There is going to be websites, press reports, newspaper, television, radio, and then you'll have ads. A lot of political parties are running ads these days. Candidate speeches and debates, previous positions these candidates have taken on issues, especially if there are issues that are important to you. Prior voting records in the assembly, which kind of issues has he acted on, and what kind of position did that person take? And talk to people who know the person. There may be some people who know the candidate who can give you first-hand information about the candidates. So you start researching about the candidates to see, who will represent your interest, which is definitely in the interest of the constituency or the nation or the state. And there are two don'ts here, which is not to be influenced by immediate benefits offered. Because many parties, especially if they are in power, start giving things out, like food packets, money, I don't know what it is. So a lot of things are given to people to influence the election. There's no point getting influenced by that, because we have to recognize that this is our own taxpayers' money that they're giving back to us. It's a right. They time it in such a way so that they can influence the voters. So ignore short-term benefits of the goodies that are being, and the Christmas gifts that are being circulated, because they make no sense. And also not to be influenced by tall promises, and promises which are also opposite to what their prior position has been. You've been against a particular issue, but when the election comes, you do a complete turnaround and say, no, now I will change. Now I'll make sure that your interests are protected. How do you trust such people? So we also need to start looking at not being influenced by tall promises or promises which are contrary to what their established positions have been in the past. So that's one way of assessing candidates. Now, the next thing is look at the leadership abilities. It's a more difficult thing to assess, but you have their background and experience. How well prepared are they for the job? How does a campaign, what does it look like, the campaigns? How professionally are they done? Do they accept speaking engagements or debates even when they are not agreeing with the position of another candidate? Can they weather the storms? You can always look at how they deal with media. Can they stand up and fight for what they believe or give up under pressure? Do they emotionally respond under pressure and later retract? There are a lot of people who say something and then later on say, no, I didn't mean that, I meant something else, because they emotionally respond to those positions. So will they be able to stand up for what they believe in? And how composed and articulate is this person with the press? And finally, as has already been said, are the campaign materials accurate? Because there's a lot of distortion that happens. I'll talk about it a little bit later on. So these kind of analysis or thinking helps you to identify the candidate who can make a difference. And two things you need to ignore in this is what a candidate is proposing. We need to look at it from two perspectives. One, is it based on an idea or a program proposed by the candidate? Or is it about a particular issue about which they feel very strongly? Or is it just a long-standing party loyalty? Because parties have positions and there are candidates who come and just repeat it. They have nothing of their own. And they cannot interpret it. They cannot create anything. They just keep repeating parrot style. The long-standing party loyalty drives that whole exercise. The other thing also is to look at who is endorsing this candidate. There are organizations that come into play, and candidates are endorsed by people or by organizations. This is a way for interest groups and organizations to put like a stamp of approval to a candidate. This is happening a lot in Kerala these days because there are religious organizations, social organizations who endorse particular candidates. Endorsement provide clues to the issues a candidate supports. There's no endorsement without some benefit for the party which is endorsing it. So who's endorsing who? And that gives you some sense of what the candidate really stands for or what the group believes that the candidate is standing for. And the last thing you would look at in a candidate is to look at who's funding the campaign contributions. Where do they get the money from? Do they use their own money or raise funds from few wealthy donors or by small contributions or by political action? Some of this may not be clear, but some of them are pretty clear if we decide to find out. And that also gives interest of who's backing this candidate and why. So those were the two things. So first I said about identifying and being clear about what is it that you're looking for in a candidate. And secondly, you look at all the candidates and say, how much do they match with what I'm looking for? Now, the third part is more important. which is others have already talked about this, is to use our own critical thinking on opinion polls and campaigns. Opinion polls will be taken by a variety of groups to evaluate public support for the different candidates. And the polls try to reveal who's leading at a certain point in time. And as you read the polls, ask a few questions. One, who has sponsored this poll? Were all the figures released or partially released? What kind of questions were asked? Were they slanted or unbiased? How were respondents selected? Was it randomly or in such a way to include a particular segment of the population? You can distort through selection of samples. And sample size, if you talk to 3 people in a constituency and generalize it, how good is that? So we need to start looking at sample surveys behind the surveys and say, how was this done? And that sometimes give you very clear indications of what's driving that survey. Very important to look at it. And also evaluate candidates' use of the television. TV is a very powerful medium today. So all candidates try to use it to their advantage. For instance, in a newscast, you may see a picture of a crowd with banners and balloons cheering a candidate, but that might have been staged by a media advisor. And a lot of things are done these days. So you need to start, as you watch news coverage campaigns, you have to be aware of staged events and focus on what the candidate is actually saying, rather than just the event itself. You can have a huge event where the candidate is saying stupid things, and that's what matters. So not the function itself, which can be organized with a lot of money. Now, the last one on this is the political ads. We need to be aware of how the media influences our reactions. We have to ask ourselves certain questions. Did we find out anything about issues or qualifications of the candidate? Or was the ad just designed only to affect our attitude or feelings about a candidate? How important was the script, the setting, and the music of these ads? They're professionally created. And some of them are very nice, but it's hollow. There's nothing, no substance in it. And the last part of it, which I'll just take very quickly because it's a very important part of this, how do we see through distortions of political communications? I teach political communications to MBA students. And one of the main things that professionals miss is that professional communication is to share ideas as well as to inform the people who are being talked to. Whereas political communication is to influence people to your way of thinking. And most people are unaware of this. So political communications may have no substance. It may have distorted information. It may be staged because the whole objective is to influence, not to inform. So there are 5 things I would say in terms of distortion techniques. This is getting a little technical, but I think it's very important. The first thing is name calling or appeals to prejudice. You attack an opponent based on a characteristic that will not have any effect on the performance. Performance to race or ethnicity or marital status or age. You can say he's old, he can't do this. They have nothing to do with the actual performance, and they are used to prejudice the people who are listening to it. Rumor mongering. These include statements says that everyone says that my opponent is a crook, but I have no personal knowledge of any wrongdoing. Which implies that what you're not saying is a crook, but you're stating that the opponent is guilty. Then guilty by association. We might say that we all know that this candidate is being backed by big money interest. Now, you have no clue about it, you have no information about it, but it influences the particular audiences to think along those directions. And then you have the catchwords, which are highly loaded words which influence you. Some of them are like non-progressive, anti-poor, or pro-rich, reactionary, fascist, right-wing. These are loaded words that are designed to trigger a knee-jerk reaction when you listen to that. And they're cleverly used in political communications. The reason I'm going into this is I teach this. Then passing the blame. A candidate denies responsibility for an action and blames an opponent on which he had no control. 5th is promising the sky, which everybody knows, unrealistic promises that no elected official can or will fulfill. And finally, evading the real issue. Whenever you're asked a question, you talk about something else. Deflecting and managing communications is a different way of looking at it. Now, I'll stop here, and if there is a second round, I'll talk about the few things that we can do at the end after we have gone through this process.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gore.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rajshekharan, for giving your views. I would not like to summarize because for the paucity of time, I want to give them more chance to speak and as well the next round. So whatsoever he has mentioned, it's very clear. So I need not to summarize this. Thank you very much, Mr. Rajshekharan, for giving your views. Now I would like to invite my next guest. He is Mr. Arun Lakshman. Mr. Arun Lakshman is the Director of Center for Policy and Development Studies, a think tank based out of Chennai and Thiruvananthapuram, focusing on social, economic, political, and strategic studies. He was officer on special duty to Minister of State for Law and Justice in Mr. Vajpayee's government. He is a freelance journalist and was former Kerala resident editor of The Pioneer. He worked with the New Indian Express as well as with Sea Voters opinion poll agency Rediff.com. Welcome, Mr. Arun Lakshman, on our show. Mr. Arun Lakshman, you have heard what Dr. C.V. Anand Bose as well as General Sharat Chand and Mr. Rajshekharan has giving their views, is spoken about the voters' do's and don'ts. Now we would like to know from you the voters' do's and don'ts. Mr. Arun Lakshman, please. Please unmute. Please unmute. Please unmute. Please unmute. Yes, please go ahead.
Good morning, Mr. Goyal. Good morning, my fellow speakers. It is a pleasure to listen to Dr. Anand Bose, General Sharat Chand, and Mr. Rajgopal. All respected professionals in their own capacity. I would like to start from what Mr. Anand Bose has said. Ballot is more important in a democracy than bullet. And like Mr. Sharat Chand says, ballot can decide what bullet will do. Okay. Now, in democracy, as we start, the voters should be particular as to whether his name is included in the voter list. There are several occasions when the Election Commission of India announced that your last date of voter, you have to enroll in the voting list. That's what I should first mention for the youngsters who are voting. In Kerala, it is around 3 lakh voters, new voters. So this we have to be very particular that our vote are included. Secondly, we can the authorities should see to it that there are no doubling of votes. In Kerala, we have found now 8 to 16 votes of a single person in different constituencies, which do affect the voting strategy, the election analysis, the election results. I come from the northern part of Kerala, in Talsheri. It's, as everybody knows, it's been dominated by a particular political party, and there are political villages. And in that villages, as a journalist, I have reported from that villages that there is democracy at zero level in certain pockets, certain pocket boroughs, as Mr. Anand Bose was saying. The pocket boroughs are still in effect in the political process of Kerala. Maybe not like what's happening in northern India in certain pockets, but it's still valid and still happening. And so that area, that part has to be very seriously taken care of by the voters. But of late, with the development of social media, with the high interest people are showing in the media, and the media bringing out the stories on this democratic lynching, the lynching of democracy by the double votes and bogus votes and fake votes, that has come down a bit. But still, the Kerala opposition has already approached the Election Commission and then the High Court of Kerala that more than 2 lakhs 50,000 votes, there are double votes. And with proof they have given, and the electoral officer of Kerala has told that, see, in this last minute we cannot do anything. And the High Court has told the electoral officer that you should see to it that there is no double voting. That is, we don't know what's happening. And we have seen a member of Legislative Assembly of Kerala in the recent Panchayat elections threatening a poll officer who incidentally belongs to the same political party of that officer, that he will see to it that if the voters are not allowed to vote. These voters are the one voter is voting for 3 times, 4 times, then only the presiding officer objectives. It is not theory. It happened in North Kerala in recently in the last Panchayat elections, and a poll officer had to narrate his experiences through a Facebook post. So this is very important in a democratic process. This should not happen. In democracy, if you want a transparent democracy, your state is not going to banana republic. You should see to it that the voting pattern or the voting are foolproof. there is transparency. The iron curtains are not there. We are not in China or in Russia. We are in a democratically safe country, India. So that part has to be taken care of, and the voter has every responsibility that his vote is not double voted, or the people are voting his vote is being what to say, somebody else is voting him for him. It should not happen. And secondly, I've seen in our state, it's actually, I can quote from the state experience of Kerala. Recently, there are yesterday, day before yesterday, the senior citizens have started voting from their homes, and there has been instances wherein these voters have been influenced by the poll officers, and there were instances wherein poll officers are going around without proper identity cards and approaching the voters. That should also be put to rest, because this will lead to a tendency, or lead to a status quo wherein people say, look, there is something bad in democracy. That should not happen. The democratic process should be transparent. The democratic process should be, everybody should be given equality in voting rights. That is the first and foremost thing that should happen. Secondly, as in electoral process, media has a role to play, do have a role to play, and media is playing their role in a society like Kerala. The media has very important role to play, and they are playing the print media. People take people take their views, or people respect their views, and that's happening in a literate state like Kerala. So media do play a role, but in fact the advent of social media led to a lot of fake news, a lot of mongering. So that should be put to rest. There should not be the fake news part has to be very clearly looked upon by the voter. He should not be prejudiced on the rumor mongering which is happening through the social media. That has to be put to rest. And thirdly, we should see to it that what the political parties are giving in their manifesto, whether this manifesto they are accountable to the manifesto. We have seen several parties promising the sky, but we know that we not touch the sky. At least we be grounded. At least if you are giving 10 promises, let it 5 be met. If that 5 is met, people can at least satisfy the basic things. Water, you promise of clean water, electricity, such things has to be happen. So voter has to be more vigilant on what the electoral process is happening, and whether the manifesto is being the man they are meeting what they are told in the manifesto. That expectation is to be met. And Lieutenant General Saralchand was speaking about some political leaders having nourished their constituencies. It is again an example of Kerala. A former chief minister has been retained from a single constituency for the past 5 decades, and he has nourished the constituency. And another finance minister, again, he has nourished the constituency, the hilt, the broad roads, a lot of institutions, that all happened. But rather than rather than putting a negative thing on that, I would like to say that each MLA can raise to that level. Each MLA, if he is sincere to his society, to his constituency, he can raise to that level. And now a lot of young MLAs are filling that bill, that they are getting things done. They are meeting cutting across party lines, cutting across being an opposition also. They are meeting the chief minister, they are meeting the concerned minister, and getting things done in their constituency. If your constituency, the people are more vigilant, and nowadays people know what is good, what is bad for them. So that again, the voter has to be extra vigilant on whether the MLA is performing, whether he is accountable. That part is also one of my point that voter should do. And one more thing, there is no point, there is no violence. Violence should not be there in electoral process. And the media, the authorities, the court, everybody, and the election commission, for instance, should see to it that there is no stand, there is no room for any violence. That should be, because if there is violence, that means people are suppressed. People, there is in our district, there is a political party is dominating. There are villages where that party dominates. There is nobody else. You cannot find any other person, any other on the street for any other political functions. But when the results come out, if it is a fair and free poll, results come out, the difference between these two parties will be very a meager volume. That means what? If it is a free and fair poll, people will vote for their choices. That's democracy. So that's for that to happen, there should be no violence, no room for violence, and the authorities will see to it that there is no room for violence. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Arun Lakshman, for giving your views. Now I'm straight going for the question to Dr. Bose. Paucity of time, I request all the panelists to give the answer in 2 minutes time, not more than that. Time is short. Dr. Bose, you have come across with many election malpractices. So can you just tell us any one which is very important and how you are analyzed and what is the remedy which you suggest for that practice? 2 minutes time, Dr. Bose, please.
Ghost voters are a problem in many of the elections. Like zombies, they come back only during voting time. In the 2014 election, there is recorded evidence that 75,000 FIRs were registered against this. The YSR Congress said in 2019 election that 57 lakh false voters have found their place in the voters list. In Kerala, now the raging controversy is just that, multiple vote and double voting. Now, in Mumbai, in the 2014 election, Mumbai alone, 2 lakh voters were missing from the voters list. Then 3 billion rupees were seized by the police, which were used for showing the money power and the muscle power to win an election. And 12.6 million liters of foreign liquor was also seized. 5 lakh kilograms of narcotics. So how are these elements important in election? That's a very, very dangerous thing. And even the constitution can be diverted, can be defaced and defiled to guard these malpractices. We have the instance of Mrs. Indira Gandhi's election, which was turned down by the Allahabad High Court. Then what was done? The emergency was proclaimed. So there are a lot of malpractices which undermine democracy, which undermine India. I think that these are all serious considerations which have to be kept in mind when we approach the Indian elections. Electoral reforms are very much needed. Since you have given me only 2 minutes, is it 2 long minutes or 2 short minutes or 2 standard minutes? Whatever it is. Anyway, I would suggest that voting should be made a fundamental duty. Every citizen must vote. There are countries where this is there. I think Australia has done this. And secondly, the voting age has been reduced to 16. In Brazil, it is there. In Germany, it is there. In so many other countries, it is there. And a 16-year-old nowadays is equally, politically conscious as an 18 or 25-year-old long time back. And then the election commission also has to be revamped. Mr. T.N. Station has made it an organization which is well oiled and fighting fit. But we should always keep it ready so that the election machinery should never fail. It is like the Indian Army, We finally have the last refuge. You are confident. Yes, the Indian Army is there. Victory is with us. That confidence should come from the election commission also. I think electoral reforms are very much needed. And now there is no need for splurging so much money in the conduct of elections. One of the costliest elections in the world, the costliest elections in the world is what is happening in India. See, when we have the digitized world, when we have online, solutions to problems, why so many army of people, officers to run the election? Elections can be conducted in a much better manner if we use the possibilities of our communication and information technology. I think maybe the next new gen election has to come. When the new gen comes to power, when the new gen becomes voters, the election pattern also has to become new gen. I think there is a lot of scope for improving the existing election machinery and also electoral reforms in the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bose. Now my question goes straight to General Sharat Chand. General Sharat Chand, you were in the army. and you know very well that if a criminal case is filed against any person, he cannot be selected in the army. Then why the criminal cases people are fighting the elections? Don't you think that once the criminals are entering, what steps the voters should take that they should not win? What you say about this, Dr. General Sharat Chand, please?
It's a very pertinent point, Mr. Goel, which probably all of us missed out. As you are aware, there's a large number of people who are standing for the election, who have got a criminal background. Number of FIRs have been launched. Number of cases are going on. As a matter of fact, we have a number of our sitting MLAs and MPs who have a criminal background and cases against them. Unfortunately, unless proven or sentenced, the election commission cannot go against them. And one of our election commissioners, the most famous one, T.N. Sheshan, had gone after this. He had debarred a number of them. And we were very hopeful that things will improve and criminals will be kept out. But unfortunately, it has not happened. And even political parties which started stating that they will not give tickets to any of the candidate with a criminal background have ultimately been forced to give it, either because of the caste of the criminal, the person with the criminal background, his standing, his money power, or even their the muscle power. So unfortunately, while it's very good for all of us to say that criminals should be kept out of politics, and which is also desirable too, it's a very, very tall order, and therefore it's more incumbent on the voters to identify these people, because a person cannot hide himself from whatever background he has from a constituency, particularly if he's a local guy. So the voters, as mentioned by many of our panelists, should spend a little time in finding out more about the candidate, his background, and as to why he is standing and why is he repeatedly getting elected. I think that is a solution for the time being, rather than electoral reforms for this particular case.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, General. Now my question goes to Mr. Rajshekharan. Mr. Rajshekharan, you have mentioned about the money, power in the electoral reforms, and you said the voter should know from which source the money is coming. But the electoral bonds cleared by the Supreme Court, now it's going to be issued from the 1st of April again, is no one can know from where the money is coming, from which place. So do you think the electoral bonds are good for the elections, because we don't know from where money is coming, whether it's number one, number two, and who is funding whom? Mr. Rajshekharan, time is very short, 1 minute only for you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Electoral bonds is still, the jury is out on that. I cannot make a judgment on it, because it depends on how much disclosure will be required as we go along. While you can ignore small ticket items, but contributions beyond a particular threshold may have to be declared, in my view, because in the interest of transparency, that might be required, and courts may get in at some point. That's my feeling about it. Now, very quickly, we have to stop making a mockery of our democracy. And as we said, there are three things. One, Dr. Bose has already mentioned about bringing age down to 16, which is a good thing. Secondly, now we have a very well-developed system of biometrics. Why is it not being used for elections and electoral votes? It's very easy to control double votes or triple votes if you have a system by which you use biometrics. You just use your thumb. That's all you need to do. And the third one, as most of the panelists have said, the voters have a responsibility to exercise their choice judiciously. There is a lot of information out there. We know who the criminals are. We know who the people who perform are. But unfortunately, it's all colored by the political affiliations. And as Mr. Arun Lakshman said, there are constituencies in Kerala where even if you put a lamppost, they'll win.
Okay.
And that's unfortunately the state.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rajshekharan. Mr. Arun Lakshman, you are being a journalist. Now I am asking very straight question. Don't you think the opinion polls are misused by the political parties for their gains, and we can avoid these opinion polls? All ban should be there, or some check should be there about these opinion polls? 30 seconds for you. Please unmute, please unmute, please unmute. Yes.
I do agree that there should be a check and balance for the opinion polls, especially the sample size. I was in an opinion poll agency. I worked at the commencement of the agency. It is not going big, see voter, and there are a lot of criticism on even their surveys. It is that they are favoring a particular party or a particular group. So there should be a check and balance for the opinion polls. I mean the sample size. You cannot meet 3-4 people and say that this is what the constituency demands. No, it's not like that. So that's very important. Opinion polls can be checked and balanced.
Okay, thank you very much. So today you have seen how the voters have to be vigilant, as all our panelists has mentioned very, very clearly. And their views are that in case if you want to vote, which you must vote, it should be your fundamental right, and you please exercise your vote, but please check everything before going for voting, whether your name is there or not. If your name is not there, please ensure that you will be included. And once you go there, vote, but vote as checking yourself, doing the audit yourself, whether about the candidate, about the political party, whether it's a criminal background, how the money, what he has or she has done in past, whether they are going to do, and what promises, false promises they are making, which they have made earlier also. All the political parties across the party lines, I can say, are using the criminals as a candidates, those who have a criminal background. When Indian Army is not accepting anyone who is having even one single criminal case against him, if those who are going to control our army sitting on the parliament or the state governments, why they are allowed to have the criminal case and they are sitting there? That is a thing which cannot be changed now, but definitely electoral reforms, as of Dr. C.V. Anand Bose and all our panelists have mentioned. Thank you very much for watching our show, which has been live telecasted by V4 News, Global TV, V4 Stream, Malnadu TV, News Gaon Se, Samvad Saroka News, as well as it was shown live on Facebook and YouTube. And our endeavor is to bring to you everyday new topic. And tomorrow, the media conference with Lal Goyal at 10:30 a.m. The topic is COVID returns. As you know, the COVID is coming back with full swing. So we have to be very, very careful. COVID returns impact on startups. And our panelists are Professor Dr. Mohanlal Agrawal, President Indo-Gulf Marketing Association, Dubai, former Professor of Marketing, Innovation and Management, IIM Lucknow, XLRI Jamshedpur and California State University, USA, Professor Dr. R. Gopal, Director and Head of the Department, DY Patil University, Navi Mumbai, Mr. Harsh Juneja, Advisor Project, CSCA, Management Consultant, Musician, President of CVA Delhi, and Miss Divya Momaya, Founder Mentor DSMCO, Founder Mentor My Bold, Director Motilal Oswal Financial Services Limited, as well as Director of Aryan Super Structures Limited, Navi Mumbai. Please tune in tomorrow for media conference Lal Goyal at 10:30 a.m. Thank you very much, Dr. C.V. Anand Bose. Thank you very much, General Sharat Chand. Thank you very much, Mr. Raj Shekharan, and thank you very much, Mr. Arun Lakshman, for enlightening our voters to use their rights very, very carefully. And thank you all the viewers for listening. And I'm sure those voters who are going to cast their votes now are going to be taking full precautions and choose the correct and the right candidate and give their votes. But please exercise your vote. That's your fundamental right. Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Thank you.